Hello, boys and girls. In this little mini lesson, we're talking about area and what we've talked about in class. But we remember that area is the number of square units it takes to cover a surface. And we actually did a lot of examples and looked at what area looked like. But in fourth grade, we really find area of rectangles and squares, and we use formulas. So we need to understand those formulas and probably where they came from. So when you first our first formula that comes up with is area of a rectangle is equal to the length times the width. We know that when we did arrays that it would be 12 centimeters down with what this would be into and 8 centimeters across. And so we would look for all these squares that were inside of here. Now notice when I wrote the formula, we don't see this formula on our math chart. We see A equals length times the width. But we already know that side by side tells us to multiply. So it's good to start seeing it this way because later on next year and then in your future, they will start writing it like this. So when you're working with a formula to find the area, and this is a rectangle, and I'll show you where that is on our math chart. You don't have to memorize these formulas. That's what's great about it. All you have to do is look at your math chart. So area is equal to, in place of L, this is the length of the figure, this is the width. Usually the longer side they call the length, but I love that multiplication is commutative, meaning order doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if you put in the width first and then the length, as long as you get both of the numbers in correctly. So the length of this is 12 centimeters, and I like to keep the units. And anytime I replace the variable, that's a letter that's unknown, we put it in parentheses. And what's the width? The width is 8 centimeters. And once again, we put that in parentheses. Now, parentheses are side by side, and this tells us to multiply. So out to the side, and we should know 8 times 12, but if we need to, we can go out to the side, and 8 times 12 is 96. That's one of our facts, so we should know those. But you need to see that you can also write it out to the side. There's nothing wrong in doing that. And then the reason I like the centimeters, because I'm multiplying a centimeter times a centimeter, that would be a centimeter squared. Remember, the units we're using to cover space are two-dimensional. They have length and width. So we're looking for how many squares it takes to cover this. So we're not using a straight line like you would just for perimeter. You're finding a distance. Here we're actually using squares to cover space, and we need to note that that's what we're using so that people will understand. And it's done with the little bitty 2. Okay, on your math chart it will say A is equal to length times width, and you guys know it's the same. You could put in 12 centimeters times 8 centimeters, which equals 96 centimeters squared. Okay, so this is an example of a rectangle, and of course I have an example of a square for you. Okay, so the thing we need to know about a square is that all sides are the same. They're the same distance across. And S stands for side of a square. When you get your math chart, you will see a square. You'll see the formula area, because we want the space inside, is equal to a side times a side. That S just means the side. Now, could we use the formula for area of a rectangle? Sure, because a square is a rectangle. But you might see this, and so you need to understand what it means. And so A, working it down, we're changing this out, would be 6 centimeters. I like to keep them in parentheses. Anytime I change a variable out, a letter out with a number, I put that number in parentheses. And it's the same because all the sides are the same. Now, we can do what the formula is telling us to do. The formula here just tells us how to work it. 6 times 6 is 36. You got it. Centimeter times a centimeter is a centimeter squared, and we write that with a little 2. And I wanted to show you your formulas so you do not have to get them memorized. You will have this when you take your test. You all have one now. Of course, I put it on paper for you that's a little bit cardstock. Thank you. I couldn't think of that. But the area of a square is A equals side by side. Remember, A stands for area, and it does tell you that right here. And rectangle is area's length times width. You want to get used to working the problems down. I know most of us just want to multiply it, but boys and girls formulas later on are going to get more difficult with different shapes, and as you learn to work them down, it's going to be easy for you to follow the rules and get the answer. Now, as I did with perimeter, I also looked at words that talked about area. Now, of course, this isn't all the words, but this is some that I've noticed in our problem solving that we've had. Anytime it wants you to find how much carpet you need, you're looking for area. If you're painting a wall, you're looking for area. Tiling, of course, is area. Sometimes they say how many square units. Well, when they say square units, obviously they're talking about squares and some size that they're going to use. If they're talking about space or inside, these are some words that will help you when you're reading the problem. Think about it and say, is it asking me area or is it asking me perimeter? So I hope this helped. Thank you.